Okay, hello. My name is Elijah Worley. I'm a research assistant with the USDA Southeast Climate Hub. Um, I have been working with Steve McNulty, Michael Gavazzi, Nancy Gibson, Kelsey Bakken, and Eva Paradiso. And today my talk is going to be on developing a new field tool for accessing forest management information. So just getting into a very brief history of silviculture in the United States. After the initial colonization of North America, the timber resources of old growth forests started being exploited. And after groups became concerned about the exploitation of these resources following the Civil War, silviculture became a major topic of interest. So this led to the discovery and implementation of specific management practices aimed at increasing or preserving stand productivity. And one of the earliest examples of which, Notes on Some of the Forest Features of Florida, was published in 1888. Since then, new management practices have been created and major adaptations to these practices have occurred, stemming from acts and laws and the publishing of multiple sources of historical literature. So the question at hand is, how can this information become more readily available for field foresters and landowners? So some of the examples of traditional practices sourced from historical literature are the Forestry Handbook from 1955, the Service Forester's Handbook from 1986, and the 1989 A Guide for Prescribed Fire in Southern Forests. So the question at hand is, how can we turn these sources of historical information into a searchable and digital format that increases accessibility for everyone. So that brings us to the topic of today's talk, which is the Forest Operations Resource Tool, or FORT. This is a dynamic compendium of traditional forestry management prescriptions. And this tool is aimed at providing management tactics sourced from historical literature that range from general practices, which would be something like broad thinning recommendations, to stand level management. This could be specific thinning rates and intervals for species or forest types. So this tool is designed to function at a variety of geographic scales, varying from the broadest regional scale down to the ecoregion level scale. So this tool's highest resolution would result in specific practices paired to specific ecoregions. So getting into ecoregions, these are distinct assemblages of species, natural communities, and environmental conditions. And in the US, the scale ranges from the broadest level 1 designation to the most specific level 4 designation. This program will group practices by ecoregion and allow for geospatial reference from levels 1 to 3. And FORT's geospatial reference will be modeled after Tableau software. So moving towards getting into what Tableau software is and what it does. Metadata is easily incorporated and managed using this software, and the data visualization aspect of the tool allows for the pairing of metadata with geospatial shapefile information. And so this allows users to map and access information relevant to their location. So as an example, on the left, this is an example of a project created using Tableau software, and on the right is a graphic of the various level 3 and 4 ecoregions of the Southeast. So this led us to believe that the data integration and mapping capabilities of Tableau software might be useful in partitioning management informations by ecoregions. So taking you through the sort of a cradle to grave approach of how the tool functions, it starts with source information being divided into specific categories. The categories that we chose were general and sub-management goals, which are the tangible goals accomplished by management, the action or sub-actions, which are descriptors of what specifically the management recommends, the associated threats, which refer to disturbances the management aims to mitigate. This could be erosion or wind throw or even flooding. the species and forest type the management deals with, the ecoregion or location in which the management is applicable, and then finally a specificity rating that describes in general how specific the management is. For example, a recommendation of general thinning to improve tree vigor during drought period would receive a 1, whereas a specific recommendation of basal area left following a cut for a specific forest type or species would be labeled with a 4. So now these categories will make up a series of drop-down options to be used in the user search function. And so I've laid out some examples of the main options a user would see upon opening the tool. These are just a handful of the available options that make up the first version of the tool, and more are being added as the tool is being developed. So for instance, say for your management goal, you're interested in increasing the productivity of your stand in the face of a specific threat, whether that be drought or fire or flooding. And then you might be interested in a specific practice, which could be fertilization, planting, prescribed burning, or something related to a harvest action. After that, it's just as simple as inputting the appropriate ecoregion and forest type for the user. And so to show how the tool will kind of function after the appropriate search criteria is inputted, I've got the 2 application examples. This is the first one. This is a general productivity approach. A user might be interested in looking at how to improve productivity when it comes to thinning of their, for instance, longleaf pine stand. Once the information is inputted, they could see a variety of options. The first maybe being for increased saw timber production as your objective. You would see that early intervention on sites with high stand densities would be the action. And another example would be determining the appropriate spacing figure using several formulas that you could use. Okay, and so for the second example, this would be in the instance of a southern pine beetle infestation. The user would be looking into treatment and recovery of their stand. They would see that the treatment would involve sun curing of infested logs. They could see that their recovery would involve salvage harvesting after wind throw and other disturbances, age class regulation, and maintaining appropriate stand densities. So these pictures are just to illustrate the main goal of FORT, which again is to bring traditional practices from historical literature into an accessible and digital format, so that a field forester is able to access this information on the go or even in the field when observing or even revising their management plans. So just to go back over some of the key points, FORT is a compendium of traditional management practices. FORT will organize practices by species, forest type, management goals, and then associate them to applicable ecoregions where possible. This tool will give users digital access to information that will in turn give them a better sense of how to go about improving the productivity and resiliency of their stand. So in summary, just to go back over it, FORT does consist of traditional management. Some of these practices may be a little out of date. They may not be as useful as new alternative tactics or new prescription plans, or they could be contributing to negative impacts such as land degradation, decreased soil water capacity, or even decreased productivity when climate change factors are introduced, since the majority of these factors weren't really given priority or maybe even considered when traditional management plans were being created. So therefore, in tandem with the development of FORT, we are also developing a tool that will help adapt traditional management practices using climate science and projections. And so you'll hear more about this tool from my colleague Eva Paradiso in her talk. And just to wrap it up, if there are any questions on the FORT tool or or anything else about the presentation, just feel free to ask or shoot me an email at the email I listed. Thank you.